With that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Nurani for the panel discussion.
That's special. Thank you very much, Curtis. And hello, everybody. My name is Nurani Nimpuno. I realized looking at the chat room that I'm a familiar face to many of you, but clearly not to everyone. So it's a pleasure to meet you all. And it is my great pleasure today to introduce today's panel, which we've called The Strength of the Networking Community During a Crisis, Working Together, Evolving Your Physical Network as well as your business strategy to survive. And eminent panelists today are Marek Isalski, CTO for Faelix, Alex Kostiw, Operations Manager for Pinnacom, and Andrew Frey, UK Managing Director for Interxion. So if I ask you all to turn on your videos, and we will kick this panel off. And I'll actually start by asking you all to give a brief introduction to yourself and your company, and that will set the scene for our panel. So let's start with you, Marek.
Thank you, Nurani. So I'm Marek, I'm the CTO at Faelix, and for almost the last 15 years, we've been helping providers architect, design and support their networks. We do third line, we do consultancy, some NOC services, and we're helping increasingly customers move on with network automation and some of their routing security. So that's what we do at Faelix.
Great, thank you. And Alex, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, my name's Alex Kostiw. I've been with Pentecom for the last sort of 5 years. We are primarily a ISP based doing temporary connectivity for public facing events here in the UK.
Great, thank you. Andrew, over to you.
Yes, hello, good morning everyone. Nice to see everyone, hope you're safe. My name's Andrew Frey, Managing Director of Interxion Carrier Hotel Limited. Recently acquired the whole of the Interxion group by Digital Realty, hence Interxion, a digital realty company. Been with Interxion now for about 4.5 years, and previous long history with Telehouse, a very proud member of LINX, and looking forward to the discussion this morning.
Lovely, thank you very much. And so I was very excited about this panel because it's a little bit of a different panel, perhaps, to the classic one where we discuss, we hotly debate the future of the internet or not, or this is a bit of a different panel in that it actually tells quite an interesting story of what happened when a few players came together to solve some challenges during the pandemic. And I think we've all heard stories about challenges during the pandemic, but this one I thought was interesting because it really talks about the strength of the community, but also not just overcoming the challenges, but finding new opportunities. So I was actually going to start with you, Alex, if you could talk a little bit about Pinnacom, an overview of where you were at the start of the year and then how you were affected by the pandemic and the challenges that followed.
Right, thank you. So yeah, Pinnacom's basically a ISP based in the UK, providing temporary connectivity for well, we were mainly doing public-facing events and broadcast and anything with a lot of people in a weird and wonderful place, and we were providing connectivity for. So when COVID hit, our full business model, you know, in March, we were set to do 6-8 months of live festival events and then move back into the broadcast world. However, all of those live events don't exist anymore. So we took a decision to sort of look at us as a business, look at the network that we had behind, and it was sort of key that we needed to be more resilient and more flexible in the broadcast sector, which is what we were doing quite a lot of work in anyway, rather than the live sector, to sort of continue the business moving forward, because the live sector we don't know when the future of that is going to come back at the moment.
Right. And so interesting that you quite quickly decided to, instead of just packing it in, decided to look at how you could pivot and take the opportunity actually to shift. So, and I think that's actually also where Marek and Faelix came in. So could you talk a little bit about how you started talking to each other, and where this started, this cooperation between the two of you?
So what we were finding is, straight off the bat, in the first couple of weeks of lockdown, we were finding a lot of broadcasters were coming to us. Everyone was trying to do remote contributors, you know, remote site broadcasts with multiple people. And it became quite apparent that our network needed to be upgraded and sort of be spread out a bit more than it was at the moment. We were based in one London data center before, and we know we needed to break out into more, so we could reach these broadcasters when we needed to, because no one had a certainty of when things were happening. We had to be flexible. So we were working already with a couple of people in the industry to sort out some of our wireless networks, and we got quickly introduced to Faelix as sort of a key provider to help us move the network as a whole from our old provider to a new sort of redundant setup.
Right, great. And so I know, Marek, you gave a great presentation at a UK North in May about expanding your network during the pandemic, and there were some great lessons learned there. So tell us how you and also someone who was already a member of the LINX community, how you started working with Pinnacom and how you approached the challenges together.
Well, I suppose the first thing we had was the approach saying, hi, we need to build out across multiple data centers. How are we going to achieve that? And we sort of started planning that out, expecting a sort of business as usual to continue. That obviously quite quickly changed, and we had to completely revamp our plan of how we were going to do this, not least because our staff, I mean, I was actually locked down in France when the French lockdown happened, so that immediately reduced the number of staff we would have available to help deliver a project in person. And from there, it was a case of identifying what partners Pinnacom would need to connect to, where we'd need to build network out to, and the sort of key data centers ended up being the telehouse complex, obviously, north and west in particular for some of the key partners that Pinnacom would need to reach, but also Interxion increasingly growing itself as a bit of a hub for the media industry. So we reached out to Interxion and to LINX to find the best way of getting the space we would need, and further down the line the connectivity partners we would need to actually bring this project about. And one of the immediate challenges was just supply chain of an awful lot of things ground to a halt in March, whether it was 1 meter fiber patches, whether it was optics, or even racks, literally racks themselves.
So there are a lot of logistical challenges. Tell us a little bit more about that, but also how you used the network that you already were part of to solve some of those issues. Sure.
So obviously with the country, UK, heading into lockdown in late March, that would have further hampered our own UK team, which is based in Manchester, from doing the sort of quite long, several week-long project that we had. And we reached out again to the community, like you say. We've got a number of colleagues, some of whom volunteered, yes, we're going to Telehouse to do other work. Is there anything you need us to do while we're there? And there very much was a community feel to, I think, the whole of the industry response. It sort of reminded me a little of what the industry used to be like in the sort of 2000s, where it was very much driven by the techies trying to solve practical problems. And while that changed as industry consolidated and things became a little bit more corporate and more process driven and a little more formal, shall we say, I think the return of that more needing some personal contact, needing some out of the box thinking at times, very, very much came back. And I think it's communities that LINX brings together, that UK North and Net Manchester and other such industry events, they foster this collaboration. And I think we very much leaned upon that to do this build, whether it was in help with our remote hands or whether it was trying to find creative ways to solve technical problems. So some providers would say, I'm afraid we can't turn up the NNI that you need in this for this new new build out in time for when you're going to actually need it. But we could potentially borrow an NNI from somewhere else and long haul it via some layer 2 service we had, and we'd have to think outside the box of how to just get things working until such a time as services could be delivered based on the challenges with supply chain, availability of staff, remote hands, field engineering, and so on.
Yeah, that's a great reflection. I think sometimes when we think about community, it's easy to be a little bit dismissive of it, or think that it's, you know, it's lovely to have friends all, you know, in many different places. But I think what you're talking about is actually the strength of that, and that there's a real practical strength in that, in solving problems by working together. And I think in the internet in particular, we rely on each other. We can't work in isolation.
Absolutely. And it's thanks to some of the tools that we as an industry support, whether it's video conferencing or online chat or similar, that we were actually able to mobilize our team, organize projects, find out different people's availability, all the logistical things that, you know, need to go into a quite significant 3 data center build out.
Yeah, great. So I'll come to you just in a minute, Andrew, but I'd like to hear a little bit more from Alex first. If you could talk us through what transformation your network went through, and what setup you have now, and I know that one of the things that you pointed out as the strength now is the redundancy and the resilience of your network now. So could you talk us through that a little bit?
So yeah, before we had a single point of presence based in Telehouse, whereas now we've built out to 3 London data centres, and that sort of gives us the opportunity, because we're in such a fluid market with providing connectivity for broadcasters. It provides us with, you know, a real flexibility behind us to either create peerings to new contacts as we see fit and as we need, you know, whether that's either through LINX or a direct cross connect in a media hub such as Interxion or in Telehouse West. So sort of moving forward, it allows us to be flexible in our network, which is key, because before our business of live events and things that we knew were coming up and we could plan for doesn't exist anymore. So the way we've pivoted the business around that is to just be more flexible, and also everyone needs more bandwidth, more internet, more connectivity now. There's more broadcasts going on. So it was really, you know, before we've now increased to a 10 gig fiber ring throughout our 3 data center pops. We can handle much more connectivity. It's much more resilient. And, you know, as we've seen, you can never be safe just in one data center. So splitting out between the 3 of them has really sort of given us peace of mind to take on these big broadcasters. And because we're doing broadcasts for sort of major UK television shows at the moment. And without that resilience behind, they just wouldn't happen.
So we're all relying on you to get through this pandemic in the evenings when we're frustrated and tired from work. It's thanks to people like you that we can survive the evenings then.
Yeah, I would be pretty confident in saying that if you've watched any television in the last 6 months, there has been something that's gone over our network. Yeah. That's
great. And you, could you talk a little bit about the broadcasting industry? Because I think one of the things you mentioned before is that it's very, the need to be agile and quick is of importance. So how has this new setup made you more agile and quick to respond? And yeah, how do you manage that?
Yeah, before we had, broadcast was essentially always based from one location, and whether that's a remote location, it was always generally one point, and you would move that data to another source. Whereas now, with so many things being, you know, no one allowed to meet and social distancing in place, the remote contribution factor has gone up through, you know, sky high. So us providing the ability to give either local connectivity to sites and then bring it all back onto the same network. We've done shows for UK broadcasters with 50, 60, 70 remote contributors, all pretty much like this, but all contributing to a show on television. And that can't be done via one connectivity method, because you just can't rely upon that. You know, things that are beyond our control isn't what we like to do. So we always back everything up, and having this sort of large network behind us allows us to back that up. Historically, broadcast has always been last minute. That's just the nature of the industry. Now it's even more so. So, you know, having the ability to be more flexible and deliver more services is key. You know, a year ago, we would be delivering 100 meg and everyone would be happy with that. And now I don't think we get many orders below 500, you know, and that's in 12 months. And it's just the factor of people need large amounts of redundant, you know, connectivity for a short amount of time. Some of our, you know, sometimes we do big installs for shows that are only 30 minutes long, you know, and then it all gets packed up and put in the truck and moved on to the next site. So having that ability to create a huge wide network for only a short amount of time and then move it off to the next spot is sort of really key with this build out.
Interesting. And this is where I'll turn to you, Andrew, because clearly having a good data center to pop in is key in this. And I think, you know, one of the things that have come up in previous discussions is the actual physical infrastructure of the internet, which is something that I guess most people don't think about in their daily life, but that you very much work with, Andrew. Do you want to talk a little bit about Interxion and what it's been like for you during the pandemic and how you responded to the needs of companies like Pinnacom and Faelix?
Yeah, very happy to. Obviously, sort of 17th of March, we were faced with lockdown. The main priority was to keep everybody safe, not just our staff. So we moved all non-essential staff home, and then we split the engineering teams, both facilities team, but actually the cabling teams, into two, and have kept them physically separate since. Then introducing all the on-site controls, which we now know and love, social distancing, that gloop we all put on our hands, markers on the floor, deep cleaning, temperature testing, the magic 4 questions you ask on entry. So there was the effect of lockdown immediately, which had the effect of dramatically curtailing visitors to site. Yet we needed to still maintain critical maintenance and critical work for customers, and to try and do that safely. That had big problems in terms of social distancing if you've got people who are shifting a lot of servers around and taking deliveries. So on a physical level, that was the challenge, and to adapt to that immediately, really almost in real time. The second effect was, as visitors went down, remote hands went up. So we needed to bring in more staff, have more staff on call to meet the needs of all our customers who couldn't come to site. And that delicate balance has gone on. We're now obviously receiving more visitors to site than we were, let's say, in April and May, but we've still got to keep them safe. So what struck us is the real physicality of our business, which is getting, and Marek alluded to and spoke about supply chain. That became very important to us, actually knowing that we had racks available and fiber and the things needed to do work for people. Yeah, and that's been generally successful. I think the other thing I'd mention, which actually Curtis was a key part of, was in the wider industry, the data center operators and others all pulled together. And it was just dramatic in order, one, to communicate, which we did initially on a weekly basis, and then working with government, because for some reason the government hadn't really recognized the data center industry and the fact that we were running the internet and nearly all the key applications that were running across it. So working with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, Digital Culture, Media and Sport, was really critical in getting them to recognize that data center operatives, engineers, are in fact key workers and could have access to site. So it's a pretty heady mix of really responding, and the sort of knock-on effect of that was collaboration. We collaborated with LINX and with Faelix and Pinnacom to get the job done. And that's really where we are today, is providing that agility and resilience and safety to now get the job done for everybody.
Yeah, great. There are a few interesting points there. What pointing out the physicality of things, but then also that the internet is actually infrastructure that we all rely on. I think this pandemic has made that very clear to everyone, not just for entertainment, but for work and for essential services. I think it would be interesting to hear also, if we go back to you, Alex, if you were to reflect upon, if you didn't have the partners of Faelix and Interxion, what would this challenge have meant to you, and how would you have done that, or would you have done it?
Honestly, I don't think we would have achieved what we did achieve without the support of the community so quickly and so well. You know, we were, by the end of March, we were at a position where, we needed a full network redesign and a rebuild in the middle of a global pandemic, whilst struggling with, a lack of jobs, a lack of revenue, a lack of, a future almost. So having that ability to reach out to the community and get them involved was essentially key to making this project work. Without it, we would have definitely gone down either a different route or been a bit more reserved in how we, in the investment and the build out that we've done. Instead, we felt confident with the people around us in the community to sort of make that investment, pivot the company into that direction, and sort of try to continue the business.
Yeah, great, interesting. And Marek, I know that you talked a little bit about community before, but really also about the ability to cooperate. I think these different constellations of these groupings of people is really what enables that work. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and your reflections on that?
Sure. It comes down to, it's that word community, but I think also is very important in that is the ability to have the right conversation. And that means having the right conversation at the right level with the right people who can both appreciate the situation that their customer is in. So in this instance, we'd be talking about Pinnacom, buying a service from a carrier, for example. And they're also our customer because they are co-located and we architected their network. And to be able to find solutions that may not be the normal playbook necessarily, but the normal playbook sort of has had to go out the window because lead times are, completely impacted by the ability of field engineers to get to site. You want to minimize the risk of a field engineering team's exposure. So naturally, everyone managing a field team is hesitant to do these singleton jobs. Just, we know you've got this urgent thing that needs doing, but we can't afford to send an engineer specifically to site just for that one thing. So it was about trying to find ways where potentially we could engage with the suppliers to work with us in a way that maybe they'd have been hesitant to earlier, but when there is a mutual benefit, to work more cooperatively and save people travel, save people the need to go to data centers. But equally, we found other challenges where, for example, access to certain carriers' racks was very much hampered by that sort of field engineering, and we'd wait. While building our fibre ring, our metro ring around London, we found half of it came up very, very quickly, but another half involved access to another carrier's racks, which took a bit longer to actually get approved, to get the right people to actually do the patching that we needed. So that, you know, we encountered challenges like this as we went along because of the risk assessment, the health and safety assessments that people were making around how to do field engineering, how to do installs on site. And again, it comes back to that physicality of the infrastructure that we build.
Interesting. I remember I was invited to at an ambassador's residence in, I won't say exactly where, but somewhere in Africa, where we were talking about infrastructure in Africa, and the ambassador didn't understand why we couldn't just turn on Wi-Fi everywhere. And I had to explain to him that there's an infrastructure behind the Wi-Fi. It's not just something, it's not just a gas that sits in the air. And but we can laugh about that. But I think, you know, to most people, the infrastructure that actually powers the internet is not visible to most people, and they don't understand all the work that goes on behind the scenes. I think I loved your slide at the UK North about how you had to socially distance in the lift, and you couldn't bring your Moose mascot into the lift with you. But that aside, so if we look at some of the challenges that the pandemic has posed to us, so one of the things that you mentioned was the need for remote hands. So Andrew, do you want to talk about the uptake of remote hands in Interxion, and if there have been other virtual solutions that you've had to come up with to sort of not to bypass the physicality, but to work with the physical infrastructure? Yeah,
sure. I think we had a threefold increase in remote hands in April and May. So yes, dramatic increase. And yes, and then we've had to go the extra level because a lot of our customers have been unable to come to site and may do so for a very long time now, particularly the ones who are based internationally. Again, I find it a miracle that this technology, for example, is able to bring us all together, and we're able to have this meeting that we probably wouldn't have done 6 months ago, and the fact that Zoom, Teams, BlueJeans and others remain robust. So that's one area, and I fully agree with Marek. This level of communication, whether that's from FaceTiming from an iPhone or in this sort of bigger forum or even WebEx type of delivery, has been vital. But then we've had to go into the world of video tours, which we perhaps never thought we'd do. Again, everyone said, well, you know, you're going to compromise the security of your data center if you show people around over a video link. But no, we've entered the world of filmed video tours, so that's sort of pre-recorded. But we've also been enjoying live broadcast. So have one of our technical team walking around the data center, showing customers the rack that they're going to put their equipment into, and also interspersing that with PowerPoint content of showing them the floor plan, showing the PDU layout and how it's actually going to be set up for them. So yes, that's a very dramatic change for us. And that then extends to services on site, which are really moving towards really quite high level concierge services around managing deliveries, unpacking areas, storage, tracking of same, et cetera, et cetera. And also, I suppose, the speed of hands and eyes. If I think back a couple of years, perhaps when I joined, our standard SLA for hands and eyes was 10 days. I don't think Alex would be happy with a 10-day turnaround because we'd miss his events. So, you know, we've had to shorten that. 3 days, I think we're moving towards, you know, a 1 day, 24-hour cross-connect service as people consume increasing cross-connects, peering, on-ramps, and everything between.
Interesting. So we've talked a little bit about the value of the community and the human networking and also the physicality of this infrastructure that we're using. But there's another aspect of it too, and that's actually the services that get provided in one location. I was wondering if you'd like to talk a little bit about that. I think you touched upon that a little bit, Alex, the fact that you could bring up peering sessions with several different players at a lot more, in a more flexible manner. But then also the access to a variety of services through, for example, Interxion or through LINX. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's just essentially, you know, making sure that we have the option to do anything that's thrown at us. We have a tendency in this sort of community to get given tasks and opportunities, much like Faelix, where everyone else says, no, this is impossible. And we say, no, this can be done. We've just got to either A, think outside of the box, or B, reach out to the local community to sort of make this work. And I think if it's beneficial for multiple people, then, you know, they all get together and allow a service to work. So having the abilities to reach out in places where we need to create a cross connect, you know, having Interxion on our doorstep that will do a cross connect within 24 hours really allows us to push our services into those industries more, because, you know, unfortunately, we don't know where we're going to be and what we're allowed to do in 6 months. So all we can do is be as flexible as possible to deliver the services where needed.
Yeah, and perhaps I could add to that something that we're seeing very strongly from the digital media community. I think, Alex, I think this is true, that broadcast or even narrowcast has come relatively late to IP, relatively late. And so what we're now seeing is the building of the digital media communities of interest or ecosystems based around IP, which is opening up opportunities for example, remote editing suites and control of, for example, sporting events or broadcast events using IP cameras, and then having a central coordinating center. So it's a sort of global VAR, but for all digital events. And then the ability to, I say, narrowcast or narrow collect before broadcasting to different devices or to different channels. And to do that, you need to be in a highly connected environment, or at least connected to highly connected to do the import and export. And the last point I'd make is perhaps we're seeing what I describe as the Harry Potter IT, which is in the time of lockdown, people are moving some of their IT out from under the stairs where it's been living for a very long time, and moving that equipment and that infrastructure into the data center industry, carrying neutral data center, peering it, linking it to cloud, because those environments aren't necessarily fit for purpose, and they may have been shut. So we've heard of occasions where, you know, the offices are shut. You're not going to get into your IT room unless you really work very hard.
Yeah, I think that's been a, you know, the point of the broadcast coming over to IP is so relevant. You know, they were doing it very slowly, but, you know, this is the kick. They've had to move, as you said earlier, you know, 3 years worth of development they've had to do in 3 months just to sort of make up to speed and make sure once was a truck that had 15 people in it, it's now 15 houses, and everyone still has to do their job. And all our job is to make sure that the content can go between all those places fluidly. So yeah, being in a highly connected environment is critical for that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like, I don't know if you've seen that meme go around. Who led the digital transformation in your organization? A, the CEO, B, the CIO, and C, COVID-19. I know we're coming to the end of this panel, but before we finish, I'd like to hear some final words from all of you actually about what you think the future will be like, both for your organization, but also for the industry, and if there are particular transformations that we've gone through because of the pandemic that we will see stay, or that we will see impact the future of our industry. I'll throw the first one to you, Marek.
Sure thing. So I think an ongoing theme for certainly the last decade has been about industry consolidation, and what has previously been sort of cloud and data center consolidation, we're now starting to see with altnets. And we very much see Pinnacom as an altnet. They might not be putting fiber in the ground necessarily, but they are providing that last mile access through a variety of means. And I think for us, industry consolidation is both a challenge and an opportunity as a network service provider and a supporting architect. Because interconnectivity has proven invaluable through this crisis, and I think it will continue to for a long time now. There's, as Andrew said, as IT infrastructure moved from IT rooms in offices potentially into carrier neutral DCs, there's very much going to also be a shift from working in the office to working from home a lot more. And that doesn't just mean adults working their jobs, but it's also going to be, students and children at school. And I think one of the big challenges we're going to see within the industry is that last mile access in areas where rural connectivity is a challenge, but also affordable connectivity. So there's countless stories circulating now where children are actually going to, basically they're going to McDonald's to use the Wi-Fi to do schoolwork. And that shows a real need for investment in infrastructure, that physical infrastructure in the ground or through the air or what have you. But it brings it back to that theme of, well, serving the community and the physicality of what we do.
Yeah, very good point. Either of you, Andrew or Alex, up to
yeah, I'll go next. Yeah, I think, look, we're possibly in a multi-cloud environment at the moment with hybrid cloud. At the core of that, to exercise your choices or needs, you need huge amounts of connectivity. That won't go away. I think we're also seeing a little bit of what I describe as post-cloud. People have been in the cloud coming out for other reasons, whether that's latency or cost. But I absolutely echo what Marek said. I think we're moving to a sort of edge cloud, maybe in a mesh. I think 5G will play a role in that, but the risk is leaving some communities behind in that. But I think that's sort of really been pushed by the pandemic. We did some analysis of just something quite simple, which was about website and website access, i.e. people who are looking for us on the internet. And you can tell from their IP addresses that they're now in a 35-mile radius of Greater London when they're looking for Brick Lane, whereas they were in a 4-mile radius before because they were at home. And that operation, that physicality, that GDP has already moved to an M25 edge. How it now gets supported and how it becomes interoperable is the challenge.
Yeah, very good points. Alex, some final words for you.
I think I'd just, like to echo both what Marek and Andrew said. I think going forward, my future is, and the company is going to be this community connectivity and making sure that everyone around us sort of gets up onto speed. It's all very well getting a city connected or, certain rural areas connected, but I think we're going to find that everywhere it needs to come up, and that's going to be the combination of smaller ISPs, bigger ISPs, smaller altnets, all coming together, picking their spots and sort of creating the community connectivity we need so that we can carry on continuing in this work from home digital lifestyle that everyone's been forced into very rapidly.
Yeah, completely agree. Thank you very much for that. And I think on a personal level, I think my takeaway is really, I have been astounded by how well we've actually managed to keep the internet running during these times. And I think it really has shown the resilience of the internet model, but also really the fact that we rely on so many different players to do their bit. So thank you all for doing your bits. And I think it will be interesting to see going forward as well, if we can address some of the weak spots, so to speak, in the internet, the fiber to the home, the areas that are underserved. So trying to take what you've all said and sum it up, I might actually steal the quote from William Gibson saying, "The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed." So with that, thank you very much for a fantastic panel. Thank you for sharing your stories. I found it incredibly interesting to hear all your different perspectives on this. Thanks again for being on this panel.